The city of Avalora never slept. Shining towers touched the clouds, glowing lights filled the sky, and endless music echoed from the golden streets. To outsiders, it was the jewel of the galaxy, rich, powerful, and full of beauty. But to Princess Illyra, heir of the great Xylar Empire, it felt empty. She lived in a palace made of crystal walls and diamond floors. Servants bowed at her every step. Admirers praised her beauty, her wealth, her family's power. But Illyra was tired. Every smile she saw was fake. Every hand that reached for her wanted gold, status, or power. Nobody looked at her with real kindness. One night, standing by her window, Illyra whispered to herself, "Do they love me? Or do they love my crown?" Her heart burned with questions. Was kindness real in this city? Or was it all just a mask? She could not trust anyone, not even her closest friends. The only way to know the truth was to see the world with her own eyes. And so, Illyra made a dangerous decision. She would leave the palace, not as a princess, but as a beggar. The next day, before sunrise, she cut her long silver hair short and covered her face with dust. She tore a plain cloth and wore it like an old dress. Looking at her reflection, even she could hardly believe the girl in the mirror was herself. No more glowing jewels. No more silk gowns. She looked weak, dirty, and forgotten, like the very people she often saw sitting in the alleys outside the city gates. Slipping out through a hidden passage, Illyra stepped into the busy streets. For the first time she was alone. No guards, no servants, no golden chariot, just her walking among strangers. At first she felt free. The morning air smelled of spices and smoke. Voices of traders filled the markets. Children laughed and ran through the streets. But soon her joy faded. People stared at her torn clothes. Some wrinkled their noses. Others whispered and laughed. One woman even pushed her away, saying, "Move, beggar. You don't belong here." Illyra's chest tightened. She had lived in luxury all her life, but now she felt the sharp edge of rejection. Nobody cared for her. Nobody even saw her as a person. Hours passed. Her stomach growled with hunger. She sat by the corner of a stone fountain, hoping someone, anyone, might share a piece of bread. A merchant walked past with a basket full of food. Illyra raised her hand weakly. "Please, just a little," she whispered. The merchant's eyes turned cold. "Earn your food, beggar," he spat and hurried away. Another man tossed a coin into the dirt, but not out of kindness, only to mock her. Children pointed and laughed. Illyra's throat ached. This was the truth she had wanted, but it hurt more than she imagined. As the sun sank lower, her strength began to fade. She had not eaten since dawn. The world around her blurred. Her head dropped and she whispered, "So this is kindness. It does not exist." She was ready to collapse when she heard footsteps, slow, steady, different from the rushing crowd. Illyra looked up. A man stood before her. His clothes were plain, not rich like the city's nobles, but not as torn as hers. His skin was darker, his eyes sharp yet calm. She had seen his kind before, humans. Workers from Earth, often ignored, sometimes disrespected. The man crouched down and looked at her face. His voice was gentle. "Are you all right?" Illyra froze. Nobody had asked her that all day. The man opened a small bag and pulled out a piece of bread and a flask of water. He placed them in her hands. "Eat, you need strength." Her fingers shook as she held the food. She wanted to ask why. "Why are you helping me?" But no words came out. The man smiled faintly. "You don't have to give me anything. Sometimes kindness is free." Illyra's heart pounded. Kindness? Free? She had never heard anyone say those words. Around them, people watched in confusion. Some shook their heads. Others whispered, "Why waste food on a beggar?" But the man didn't care. He stood between her and the world, shielding her with nothing but his presence. For the first time in her life, Illyra felt something she could not explain. Warmth, gratitude, a spark of hope. She ate slowly, her eyes never leaving the man's face. He was different from everyone else, different from her people, different from all the liars and flatterers in her palace. But a question burned inside her. If he knew who I really was, would he still help me? As the last light of day faded and the city's towers began to glow, Illyra realized her secret test had only just begun. The man stood, offering his hand to help her rise. "Come," he said. "The streets are dangerous at night. I will walk with you." Her heart raced. She did not even know his name, but something told her this meeting was no accident. And so the princess, disguised as a beggar, took her first step into a journey that would change not only her life, but the fate of two worlds. Night fell across the shining city of Avalora. Towers glowed with golden light, music echoed in the distance, and yet, in one quiet corner, a human and a disguised princess sat in silence. Elira, still dressed as a beggar, stared at the piece of bread in her hands. She had tasted many foods before, rare fruits, golden feasts, rich meals that only royalty could afford, but never had bread felt this heavy, never had water tasted so pure, because for the first time, food was given not for her crown, not for her status, but for her life. The man beside her watched with calm eyes. His voice was steady. "You were starving. Eat slowly. No one should suffer like that." Elira looked at him. She wanted to speak, to ask who he was, why he had stopped, but her throat felt tight. Nobody else in this city had even glanced at her with kindness. Why him? After a long moment, she whispered, "Why did you help me?" "You do not know me." The man smiled faintly, a tired but gentle smile. "Maybe I don't need to know you. Sometimes people just need help. Nothing more." Those words struck her heart. Simple, honest. Nothing like the polished speeches of the nobles she knew. He rose and offered his hand. "Come, it's not safe to sit here at night. Thieves and gangs walk these streets. I'll take you somewhere safer." For a moment, Elira hesitated. She had never touched the hand of a stranger before. Back in the palace, servants would kneel, bow, or wait for her order. Nobody had ever offered their hand as an equal. Slowly, she reached out. His hand was warm, rough from work, but steady. They walked together through narrow alleys. The man led her carefully, watching every shadow. He moved with quiet strength, not proud, not arrogant, but protective. At last he stopped by a small shop made of old stone and wood. The lights inside were dim, the shelves filled with tools and scraps. It was nothing compared to the glittering hall she had known, but it felt real, alive. "This is where I work," he said, "and sometimes sleep. You can rest here for tonight." Inside, Elira sat on a wooden chair. Her hands touched the rough surface, so different from the crystal tables she knew. The man poured her more water and set down another small piece of bread. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded. "Don't thank me. Just promise me something. When you find someone else in need, pass it forward. That's how kindness survives." Elira's eyes widened. Nobody in her world spoke like this. To her people, kindness was weakness. Power ruled everything. Yet here was a human speaking as if kindness was strength. As the night grew darker, they talked. At first, only a little. He asked where she came from. She lied, saying she was from a distant village fallen into poverty. He did not press for details. Instead, he told her his own story. His name was Kale. He had come from Earth years ago, seeking work among the alien cities. Most humans here lived hard lives, seen as cheap labor, often ignored, sometimes treated as less. But Kale did not complain. "I work with machines," he explained. "Engines, small crafts, broken tech. Nothing special, but it pays for food. That's enough for me." Elira listened, her heart heavy. She had never thought of humans this way. In her palace, they were invisible. But Kale spoke with quiet pride, not shame. Suddenly, a sound broke their peace. The creak of a door. Heavy footsteps. Kale stiffened. "Stay here," he whispered. Two rough-looking aliens entered, their eyes sharp and greedy. "Kyle," one of them growled, "still feeding strays?" His gaze fell on Elira. "That beggar doesn't belong here. Give her to us." Elira's chest tightened. Fear gripped her. She was still weak, still too hungry to run. Kyle stepped forward, his body shielding her. "Leave, she's under my roof." "You'll not touch her." The aliens laughed. "A human protecting trash? You'll regret this." One reached for Elira. Before she could cry out, Kale's hand caught the attacker's wrist. With quick, practiced strength, he shoved him back. A fight broke out in the small shop. Tables cracked, tools scattered, shadows clashed. Elira watched in shock. Kale was not strong like a soldier, but he fought with heart, with fire. Every move, every strike was not for himself, but for her. At last, the intruders fled, cursing into the night. Kyle locked the door, breathing hard. His arm was bleeding, but he smiled as if it was nothing. "You're safe," he said softly. "That's all that matters." Elira's eyes filled with tears. She could not stop. Nobody had ever risked their life for her without knowing her name, without wanting reward. She whispered, almost trembling. Why? Why do this for me? Cale looked at her, his gaze steady. Because if I walk away when someone needs me, then what am I worth? Elira could not speak. Her heart felt heavy and light at the same time. This human was unlike anyone she had ever known. In her world of golden lies, no one had shown her this kind of courage, or this kind of heart. As she watched Cale bandage his wound with torn cloth, one thought echoed inside her. This man does not know I am a princess. Yet he gave me more than anyone in the palace ever did. Genuine kindness, and deep in her chest, Elira felt the spark of something new, something dangerous, something beautiful. Her test was no longer about strangers in the city. It had become about one man, one human, and she feared her heart might never be the same again. The city of Avalora glittered under the twin moons, but not every corner was safe. In the alleys, shadows stretched long and dark, and whispers of crime filled the night. Inside Cale's workshop, the little lamp glowed. Elira sat quietly, still dressed in her disguise as a beggar. She watched Kyle clean the blood from his arm after the fight. His movements were calm, almost too calm, as if wounds were nothing new to him. You shouldn't have done that, she whispered. Kyle looked up. Done what? Fight for me. You could have been killed, he shrugged. Then at least I would have fallen for the right reason. Those words made her heart race. No one in her palace would risk a scratch for her unless commanded. Yet here was a human, risking his life for someone he thought was nothing but a poor stranger. Outside, the streets buzzed with tension. Guards of the Empire roamed everywhere, searching for someone. Posters glowed on the crystal walls. Missing Princess Elira of the Xylar Empire. Rewards offered, warnings declared. But Cale did not see the posters. He did not know the truth. Only Elira felt the chill of danger pressing closer with every passing hour. Her secret could not last forever. Days passed. Elira stayed hidden in Cale's workshop. She swept floors, fetched tools, and listened to his quiet stories. He told her about Earth, blue skies, green forests, oceans that stretched endlessly. She listened with wide eyes, imagining a world so free, so alive, so unlike her golden cage of a palace. But danger never stayed far. One evening, as Cale worked on a broken engine, a group of alien thugs gathered outside. They had followed the trail after the last fight. They knew Cale had protected the beggar girl, and they wanted revenge. Elira peeked through a crack in the door. She counted 6 of them, big armed with glowing blades. Her stomach knotted with fear. Kyle, she whispered. They're coming. Cale put down his tools and wiped his hands. His face showed no fear, only a quiet readiness. Stay behind me. No matter what happens, Elira shook her head. You can't fight them all. He gave her a small smile. Then I'll stand until I fall. That's all I can do. The door burst open. The thugs entered, sneering. Well, the human mechanic. Still playing hero, one growled. Cale stepped forward, blocking their view of Elira. Leave, you don't belong here, the leader laughed. And that beggar girl? She doesn't belong either. Hand her over and maybe we won't break your bones. Elira's breath caught. If Cale gave her up, he could save himself. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Cale's voice cut through the air, sharp and clear. She's under my roof. She stays. The fight exploded. The workshop turned into chaos. Cale grabbed a metal rod, swinging it with desperate strength. Sparks flew as blades clashed against steel. Elira crouched in the corner, heart pounding. Every strike Cale made was wild but full of willpower. He was not trained, not armed, but he fought like someone with nothing to lose. One thug slammed him against the wall. Cale gasped, blood running from his mouth. Yet he pushed back, roaring with stubborn fire. Elira's hands shook. She could not just watch. Her disguise hid her. But inside she was still a princess of the Xylar Empire. She knew secrets of power her people guarded. She pressed her hand against a shard of crystal, whispering old words she had been taught as a child. The shard glowed faintly, releasing a burst of light. The thugs staggered, blinded for a moment. Kyle struck with all his strength, knocking 2 of them to the ground. The others cursed, retreating into the night, swearing they would return. Breathing hard, Cale dropped the metal rod. His body shook, bruised and bleeding, but he was still standing. He turned to Elira. Are you hurt? Elira's eyes filled with tears. No, but you are. Kyle smiled faintly. Wounds heal, but losing someone who needs me? That would not heal. Her chest ached. She had seen courage before in soldiers of her empire, but it was always bought with gold or forced with commands. Kale's courage was different. It came from his heart, not his duty. That night, as she helped bandage his wounds, Elira realized her test had gone deeper than she planned. She had wanted to see if kindness existed among strangers, but now she had found something far greater. A human who gave kindness without reward, a human who fought shadows without fear, a human who treated her not as a beggar, not as a princess, but as a person. Yet danger was not over. In the distance, the Emperor's guards discovered fresh clues. They whispered of a strange beggar girl seen with a human. The net of the Empire was closing, and soon secrets would break. As Elira lay awake in the small workshop listening to Kale's breathing, her mind raced. How long before he learned who she truly was? And when he did, would he still look at her with the same eyes of kindness? The shadows of danger had only begun. The nights in Avalora grew colder. The golden towers still shone, but to Elira, every glow felt like a warning. The Empire was searching for her. Every guard, every poster, every whisper of the streets carried her name, Princess Elira missing. Reward for her return. But here she was, hidden in a workshop, living as a beggar, cared for by a human who knew nothing of her true self. Kyle's kindness was like a fire in the dark. He shared food, repaired broken machines, and kept watch while she slept. He asked for nothing in return. Yet with every passing day, his eyes seemed to search her deeper, as if he sensed a truth she was hiding. One evening, the sound of rain tapped against the roof. Elira sat by the dim lamp, pretending to sew a torn cloth, though her hands shook. Kyle watched her quietly, wiping oil from his fingers after fixing an engine. Finally, he spoke. "You're not like the others." Elira froze. "What do you mean?" "You speak differently," Kale said. "Your words, your manner, even the way you hold yourself. You've seen more than the streets. You're educated, maybe even trained." Elira's heart pounded. If he guessed too much, everything would shatter. She forced a laugh. "I only listened to others, picked up their ways." Kale tilted his head, his eyes steady. "Maybe, but I don't believe you're just a beggar. Who are you really?" The question cut through the air like a blade. Elira's breath caught. She wanted to tell him the truth, to remove the mask, to say, "I am the princess you risked your life for." But fear strangled her. If he knew, would his kindness remain? Or would he look at her with the same greed and hunger as the rest of her world? She looked away, her voice trembling. I can't answer that." Kale studied her for a moment, then sighed. "Everyone has secrets. I won't force yours out, just know. Secrets have a way of finding light, whether we want them to or not." Elira's chest tightened. He was right. The truth was moving closer every day. Outside, the Empire's guards tightened their search. They had followed rumors of a mysterious beggar girl protected by a human mechanic. Patrols swept through the lower districts, their crystal spears glowing in the night. One night, as Elira fetched water, she heard two guards whispering in the alley. "They say the princess disguised herself. Foolish girl. But the Emperor will not forgive. If we find her, the reward will be more than gold." Her blood ran cold. She hurried back to the workshop, her heart hammering. The next morning, Kale noticed her pale face. "You're shaking. What happened?" Elira hesitated. She wanted to tell him, but the words locked in her throat. Instead, she whispered, "Danger is close." "Too close," Kyle nodded slowly. "Then we prepare. If they come here, we'll face them together." Her eyes widened. "Together? But this isn't your fight." Kale's jaw tightened. "If I walk away, then what kind of man am I?" "You need someone. That's enough." His words pierced her heart. She turned away quickly, hiding the tears in her eyes, but fate was not kind. That evening, while Kyle was repairing a small engine, a shadow appeared outside the workshop. A guard, one of the Emperor's men, peeked through the window. His gaze locked on Elira's face. Recognition sparked. Her eyes, those royal silver eyes, were too unique to mistake. The guard's voice rang out. "There she is! The princess!" Elira gasped. Kale sprang to his feet, grabbing her hand. "Run!" They darted through the back door into the rain-soaked alleys. Cries of pursuit echoed behind them, boots striking stone. The city that once ignored her now burned with danger. They ran until their breaths broke, hiding in a ruined archway. Rain dripped from their hair, their hearts pounding in the silence. Cale turned to her, his voice sharp. "Princess? They called you Princess." Elira froze. The secret was broken. No more lies, no more disguise. Her lips trembled. "Yes, it's true. I am Princess Elira of the Xylar Empire." Kyle stared, his expression unreadable. The rain fell harder, filling the silence between them. "You..." He exhaled slowly. "All this time, you lied." Elira's chest ached. "I had to. I wanted to know if kindness still existed. If people could see me as a person, not a crown, and you were the only one who did." Her voice cracked. "Please, don't hate me." Kyle's eyes softened, but pain remained. "You should have told me. Do you know what danger you've put us in?" Elira's tears mixed with the rain. "I know, but if I told you from the start, would you have still helped me? Would you still have risked your life?" Cale was silent. The answer burned inside him, but he could not speak it. In the distance, the guards' torches flickered, their shouts growing closer. Elira looked at Cale with desperate eyes. "They will take me back. If they do, I'll never be free again, and you. They will punish you for helping me." Cale clenched his fists. "Then we can't let them catch you." For the first time, Elira reached for his hand, not as a princess, not as a beggar, but as someone terrified of losing the only true kindness she had found. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Even if the whole empire hunts us, don't leave me." Kyle looked at her, torn between fear and something deeper. Then slowly he squeezed her hand. "I won't." The night roared with thunder as they disappeared into the shadows. Secrets broken, destinies tied. The rain had stopped, but the city of Avalora was alive with the sound of marching boots. The Emperor's guards filled the streets, their glowing spears lighting the night like fireflies of war. They hunted for one person, Princess Elira. Elira and Cale moved through the dark alleys, their clothes wet, their breaths heavy. Each step echoed with fear. She clung to his hand, her silver eyes darting to every shadow. "They are everywhere," she whispered. Cale's jaw tightened. "Then we find another way. I won't let them take you." But fate had other plans. They turned a corner and walked straight into a squad of guards. "There," a voice shouted. In seconds, Cale pulled Elira behind him. His eyes burned with defiance. He had no weapons, no armor, only his body between her and danger. "Run," he yelled. Elira shook her head. "Not without you." The guards charged. Kyle fought fiercely, striking with his fists, kicking with desperate power. He moved like a man who had nothing left to lose. But for every guard he knocked down, two more took their place. A spear struck his side. He gasped but did not fall. Another slammed into his back, and still he stood, swinging wildly, refusing to give in. "Elira," he shouted, "go!" Tears blurred her eyes. She wanted to run, but her legs would not move. Her heart refused to leave him. And in that single moment of hesitation, everything was lost. Hands grabbed her arms. A metal collar snapped around her neck, glowing with restraint. "Princess Elira," a guard sneered, bowing mockingly. "Your father will be pleased." Cale roared, breaking free from two guards and charging forward. But a spear struck across his chest, knocking him to the ground. Blood poured, his strength fading. Elira screamed. "Stop, don't hurt him." The guards dragged Cale up roughly. One spat. This human dared to touch royalty. "He'll pay with his life." Elira's heart froze. She twisted against her captors, crying out, "No! He is innocent. Spare him!" But her voice was drowned by the sound of chains. The journey back to the palace was like a nightmare. Elira, bound in restraints, was pushed forward through streets filled with whispers. Citizens gasped at the sight of the lost princess, but none knew the truth of her disguise. Cale, beaten and bloodied, was dragged behind like a criminal. Yet even in chains, his eyes stayed locked on her, steady, unbroken. That look gave her strength. When the great palace gates opened, Elira felt the weight of her world crash down. Crystal towers glittered. Guards stood in endless rows, and at the throne sat the Emperor, her father. The Emperor rose, tall and commanding, his golden robes flowing. His voice thundered across the hall. "My daughter returns, dressed as filth, walking with vermin." His eyes burned as they fell on Cale. "Explain yourself, Elira." Elira dropped to her knees, the collar still glowing. "Father, I wanted to see the truth of our people, to know if kindness existed beyond the palace walls." Her voice cracked. "And I found it. Not in nobles, not in lords, but in him." She pointed to Cale. The human knelt in chains, blood dripping from his face. Yet he met the Emperor's gaze with defiance, not fear. Murmurs filled the hall. Guards and nobles exchanged shocked glances. The Emperor's voice cut through the noise. You shamed the Empire. You lowered yourself to walk among beggars. And worse, you let this human touch you. He saved me, Elira cried. When all others mocked me, when no one cared if I lived or died, he gave me food. He risked his life. Father, he is more noble than any in this hall. The Emperor's eyes hardened. Enough, he will be executed at dawn. His blood will erase this insult. No, Elira screamed, tears streaming. Kill me if you must, but spare him. The court fell into silence. No one had ever heard the princess defy her father. The Emperor's lips curved into a cold smile. You love this human? Elira's heart raced. She opened her mouth, but words failed. Kyle, still kneeling, spoke instead. His voice was weak but steady. I don't ask for her love. I don't ask for reward. All I ask is that you see her as she is, not as a crown, but as your daughter. The Emperor's face twisted with fury. Silence. He raised his hand, signaling the guards. Take him to the dungeons. At sunrise, his life ends. Kale was dragged away, chains clattering. Elira screamed his name, struggling against her captors, but the collar burned, holding her down. That night, Elira was locked in her chamber, surrounded by golden walls that now felt like a prison. She pressed her hands against the crystal window, her heart breaking. She whispered to herself, I left to find kindness, and I found it only in him. Now they will take him from me. Tears blurred her vision, but inside her chest fire burned. She was a princess of the Empire, but for the first time she wanted no crown, no throne, only freedom, only Kyle. Her father thought the story was over. But Elira knew it had only begun, for she would not let the dawn steal the only true kindness she had ever known. The palace never slept that night. Torches burned, guards marched, whispers filled the golden halls. The entire empire was waiting for sunrise, the moment when the human, Kale, would be executed. But inside her chamber, Princess Elira sat against the crystal window, her eyes red from tears. She had begged her father for mercy, but his decision was final. To the Emperor, Kale was nothing more than a stain to be erased, yet to Elira, he was everything. He was proof that kindness was real, proof that someone could see her not as a crown, not as a prize, but as a person. And now that person was about to die because of her. Her hands clenched into fists. No more silence. No more lies. I will fight for him. When morning came, the throne room was filled with nobles, advisors, and soldiers. Crystal banners hung high, and the Emperor sat tall upon his throne, his golden crown shining like fire. Kale was dragged inside, chains rattling against the marble floor. His face was bruised, his body weak, but his eyes still burned with quiet strength. He was forced to kneel before the Emperor. The court fell silent as the Emperor's voice thundered, This human dared to touch royalty. He corrupted the princess, brought shame upon our empire. Today his blood will cleanse this dishonor. Elira stepped forward, her voice cutting through the silence. No, father, gasps filled the hall. No one had ever interrupted the Emperor. Elira's body shook, but her voice grew stronger. If Kale dies, then the shame is not his, it is mine. For it was I who left the palace, I who disguised myself, I who tested the hearts of our people. And do you know what I found? Greed, cruelty, empty smiles. None showed me kindness, except him. Her silver eyes locked on the Emperor. Father, you wear a crown of power, but he wears a crown of heart. If you kill him, you kill the only truth I have ever known. The court erupted in whispers. Nobles shifted nervously. Some looked at Kyle with curiosity, others with disgust. The Emperor rose from his throne, his voice shaking with fury. Elira, do you defy me? Do you dare choose a human over your own blood? Elira's chest burned, but she stood tall. I choose what is right. I choose kindness. I choose him. The words struck the court like thunder. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. For a long moment, silence pressed heavy on the hall. Then his lips curved into a cold smile. Very well. If this human is as noble as you claim, let him prove it. Let him face the trial of valor, the hall gasped. The trial of valor was no ordinary test. It was an ancient challenge, a deadly arena of traps, beasts, and impossible odds. No outsider had ever survived it. If he passes, the Emperor continued, his life is spared and he may walk free. If he fails, his death will be remembered as justice. Elira's heart pounded. Father, that is unfair. The Emperor's gaze cut through her. Fairness is for the weak. Nobility must be proven. If you wish to stand beside this human, let him prove he is worthy. Guards dragged Cale forward. His chains were unlocked, but not his bruises. He looked at Elira. His eyes calm despite the storm around him. Elira, he said softly. Don't cry. Whatever happens, I regret nothing. I would save you 1,000 times over. Her throat tightened. You don't have to do this. But Cale shook his head. If this is the path, then I will walk it. Not for glory, not for reward, for you. The gates to the arena opened. A roar of sound rushed in. Crowds of aliens filled the seats waiting to watch. They had heard the story. A human standing trial for the princess's honor. To them, it was entertainment. To Cale, it was life or death. The floor of the arena shimmered with shifting platforms. Hidden traps glowed faintly, and in the distance cages rattled with the cries of alien beasts. Elira stood at the edge, her hands trembling. She wanted to leap in, to fight beside him, but she was forced back by guards. Kyle stepped forward, his body battered, his strength nearly gone, but inside his chest his heart burned brighter than any weapon. The Emperor's voice thundered above the arena. Let the trial of valor begin! The gates slammed shut behind Cale. The crowd roared, the ground shook, and Elira, watching with tears in her eyes, whispered, Please, survive. Please prove to them what I already know, that your heart is stronger than any crown. The arena floor trembled under Cale's feet. Thousands of eyes watched from the high seats of crystal and gold. Nobles leaned forward, eager for blood. Soldiers cheered for the Empire. And on the throne above, the Emperor sat like a judge of fate, his cold eyes locked on the lone human below. At the edge of the arena, Princess Elira clutched the rail, her silver eyes wide with fear. She had begged, she had cried, but now there was nothing more she could do. The only hope was Cale. The trial of valor had begun. The ground shifted. Stone platforms rose and fell, moving like waves on an angry ocean. Cale staggered but kept his balance. Then with a roar, the first cage opened. A beast charged out, 10 feet tall, with claws like blades and skin like stone. Its eyes glowed red as it pounded toward him. The crowd screamed with excitement. Cale's chest burned. His body was weak, still injured from the guards' beating, but his mind sharpened. He had no weapon but his will. He dodged to the side as the beast struck, its claws tearing through stone where he had stood. He grabbed a broken chain from the ground, rusted, heavy, but strong enough. Wrapping it around his arm, he swung it at the beast's face. Metal rang against stone, the creature snarled, and the crowd cheered louder. Again and again Cale struck, not with skill but with courage. At last, with one final roar, the beast stumbled and collapsed, its red eyes fading. Kyle dropped the chain, his arms trembling. His body shook with pain, but he stood tall. Above, Elira whispered, You can do this. I know you can, but the trial was not over. The floor shifted again, opening cracks filled with burning fire. Cale leapt from stone to stone, his boots slipping, heat licking his skin. A wrong step meant death, but he pushed forward, his eyes fixed not on the flames but on Elira. Another gate opened. This time 2 beasts emerged, smaller but faster, with sharp tails that lashed like whips. They circled him, hissing. Cale breathed hard. He could not fight them head-on. He had to think. When one lunged, he rolled aside, letting it crash into the fire crack. The beast screamed, its tail thrashing as it fell into the flames. The second attacked, but Cale grabbed a loose stone and struck its eye, then shoved it back into the pit. The crowd roared with shock. A human had done the impossible. Still, the trial was merciless. Walls closed in, spikes shot from the ground, and the final cage opened. Out stepped the deadliest monster of all, a creature bred for war, plated with armor, its roar shaking the arena itself. Kyle's knees buckled, his vision blurred. But when he looked up at the Emperor's throne and saw Elira's terrified face, fire returned to his soul. He whispered to himself, Not for me. For her, the beast charged. Cale waited until the last second, then dove aside, grabbing one of the fallen spears from the ground. He rolled to his feet, holding the weapon with both hands. The monster swung its armored tail, smashing the floor to rubble. Cale barely avoided the strike. He darted forward, thrusting the spear into the gaps of its armor. The beast roared in pain. Again and again Cale struck, Not as a soldier, not as a warrior, but as a man refusing to surrender. Finally, with one last desperate cry, he drove the spear deep into the beast's throat. The creature collapsed, shaking the arena with its fall. Silence followed. Cale fell to his knees, blood dripping, chest heaving. But he was alive. Alive when no one believed he could be. The silence broke into thunderous noise. Half the crowd cheered, half gasped in disbelief. The Emperor rose, his face pale with anger. His voice shook the air. This is impossible. A human cannot triumph in the trial of valor. Alira stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. Yet he did. Not with wealth. Not with armies. Not with crowns. He won with courage, with heart. That is true nobility, father. Not gold, not fear, kindness and bravery, the nobles whispered. Soldiers looked at one another uneasily. The truth was too bright to ignore. The Emperor's hand shook, torn between fury and pride. Finally he spoke, his voice cold but heavy. The human has proven himself. By the law of the trial, his life is spared. Alira's breath broke with relief. She rushed down the steps, pushing past guards, and fell to Cale's side. You did it, she whispered, tears shining. You survived. Cale smiled weakly. Told you. I regret nothing. The crowd watched as Alira lifted his hand in hers. In that moment, a princess and a human stood together. Not as ruler and subject, but as equals. And in the silence that followed, one truth echoed through the hearts of all who saw. Kindness was stronger than power. Bravery was greater than gold. And in the darkest of trials, it was not the empire that shone brightest. It was the heart of a human. Far above, even the Emperor turned away. His eyes clouded with something he could not admit, and Alira whispered the words that would be remembered for generations. He showed me what no riches could. That humanity is small in body but vast in heart, and that heart can change worlds.